Comment? Okay.
Okay. So, could we start? Not losing the time. Well, it's quite interesting, and people noted this, that the last Ecofin in this semester, quite unusually, ended before the midnight. And we were successful. We approved the general approach on single resolution mechanism. I would say now, looking backwards to all this work that was done, that it is an extremely complicated dossier. Extremely complicated and made of many issues that have been put together. Along with the regulation, we had also approved statement of Eurogroup and Ecofin ministers on SRM backstops. You are perfectly aware of that because it was in the press already in the morning. We formally approved it. We approved also draft decision about intergovernmental agreement. As you know, single resolution mechanism, according to the deliberations, the results of our deliberations has been, compared to the initial proposal of the Commission, split into two files, one of which remains regulation, that means legal act of European scale in the European law, that is obligatory to everyone. And the other one will be intergovernmental agreement, and we agreed on main principles of that agreement. That agreement should be concluded by all the member states that will participate in the banking union. By definition, first of all, these are Eurozone countries, but also those that would opt in. This agreement solves legal problems associated with bank levies, putting levies on banks, collecting money to the Single Resolution Fund, and achieving the steady state, as we call it in our documents, in 10 years, when it will be fully mutualized. So we have agreed these principles that will be transposed into intergovernmental agreement possibly in 2 coming months. We approved also general approach on single resolution mechanism regulation that will go to the trialogues with the European Parliament. This is going to be the job of the Greek presidency. And if concluded in the Parliament, I think this will be one of the fastest going legislative files in the European history. From the proposal in July this year until, say, March, April next year, this is even faster than it took for a single supervisory mechanism. And of course, nothing would happen without cooperation between member states, both Eurogroup and all the rest. But also nothing would happen without cooperation and strong support, with some reservations, but strong support, strong help from the European Commission and especially Michel Barnier. And I'll pass the floor to Michel.
Many thanks, Rimandas, and thank all of you for your patience and your attention. I will be ready in a few minutes to answer more technical details with my head of cabinet on my side, Olivier Garçon. But first of all, I want to say that today is a big momentous day for banking union. Progress made in recent days on the single resolution mechanism and many financial files is unprecedented, really speaking. We are introducing revolutionary changes to Europe's financial sector so that taxpayers no longer foot the bill when banks make mistakes or face crisis, ending the era of massive bailouts. And in the Eurozone, for those countries which are more interdependent, linked and linked to their banks too, creating the banking union to break the vicious circle between the banks and their sovereigns was and still is our main goal. Our rules are also essential to create long-lasting financial stability, the precondition so banks can lend to the real economy. Let me recap following Rimantas. In the last 10 days, number one, the trilogue agreement on bank recovery and resolution, a toolbox to better prevent and manage a bank crisis in all 28 member states. Number two, the trilogue agreement last night on deposit guarantee schemes. And today, a Council general approach on the single resolution mechanism. The SRM implements the resolution directive in the banking union. The Commission does not agree on every point in the general approach, but real strong progress in very little time has been made, and I want to thank very sincerely the Lithuanian presidency, Rimantas and its team, for the very, very strong work they have done for the last few months. On top of all these issues, work has progressed to make the financial sector as a whole safer. Europe continues to be at the forefront of this implementation of G20 commitments, improving the quality of audits, thanks to the trilogue agreement Tuesday this week, improving settlement thanks to the trilogue agreement earlier today on central securities depositories. And we are working in a positive way to reach an agreement at the beginning of January on a very strong piece of this regulation for MiFID. We are not at the end of the road, in particular on the SRM. Far from it. Negotiation will now start with the European Parliament. The committee of the European Parliament adopted its position yesterday, thanks to the rapporteur, Elisa Ferreira, and both sides are committed to banking union, so compromise is possible and necessary. So I think it's a key day for this cornerstone of the banking union and the financial stability of the Eurozone, which is linked to the stability of the single market. And we are ready to answer to your questions.
Question to both of you gentlemen. After today's agreement, would you say that the banking union is becoming a reality? Is all you need now the approval of the European Parliament? So basically, is it within reach, or are we still far away?
Let me start. Of course, this is not the last step. And for the banking union, really, not only legal acts are necessary, but also practical action. And banking union has become a reality in October, when single supervisory mechanism became a reality. But now we have all other pillars, not all ready. Some formal agreement is necessary for DGS, Deposit Guarantee Scheme, BRRD, which is for 28. For SRM, of course, we need trilogues, but also practical work will be needed. Creation of new institutions, say resolution board in single supervisory mechanism. Supervisory board is being created, and the chief of this body has been recently appointed. And a very important step, which is already inevitable because it is inscribed in European legal acts, is asset quality review or health check of European banks. And this should be done. And it is really was one of the pressing issues to reach faster the agreement on single resolution mechanism, which will complement this supervision, because supervision without a possibility to take action afterwards if something appears not to be too good is almost nothing. It will create problems rather than solve them. So practical work will be needed, but I'm very happy that it was me who presided at the period of time when the most intensive work on legal basis was carried out. But Commission and Commissioner Michel Barnier, his team is also, they are generators of necessary legal acts. And believe me, these regulations are so complicated, as complicated as today's financial world is.
Just if I may, let us remember that the head of states asked us at the end of June 2012 to create this banking union on the basis of the single rule book for the 28 member states. A few weeks after, I've proposed the first pillar for supervision. The integrated supervision will be implemented in November 2014. And for the second pillar, thanks to this first agreement between the ministers, and I hope thanks to the common work between the Parliament and the Council in the next few weeks under the Greek presidency, I can be confident of the fact that the second pillar, the resolution at the European level for the banking union, will be operational in 2015.
Jim Brunston from Bloomberg News. As a question for the Commissioner.
Yes.
Commissioner Barnier, you said this morning when there was the public session that you had some concerns about the directions the Council was heading in on the SRM, one of them being decision-making procedures, but also others. Are some of those still outstanding? If they are, what are they? And also, what chance do you see of them being resolved or corrected in the negotiations to come with Parliament? Thank you.
If I may, I will answer in French and ask to my head of cabinet, who is not paid to be an interpreter, but we can just to help me to be more precise. Comme l'a dit tout à l'heure le ministre français Pierre Moscovici, nous sommes aujourd'hui, ce soir, sur un compromis.
As French Minister Moscovici said a moment ago, we have reached tonight what is a compromise.
Et pour moi, c'est un compromis positif.
For me, it's a positive compromise.
Et extrêmement important.
It is extremely important.
Pour ce deuxième pilier de l'union bancaire et la crédibilité de ce grand projet révolutionnaire de gestion intégrée de la supervision de la résolution des banques dans la zone euro.
For the second pillar of banking union and the credibility of this revolutionary project for integrated supervision of banks within the Eurozone.
Alors, je peux toujours, par rapport à ma proposition initiale, constater des évolutions, exprimer quelques regrets. J'aurais préféré qu'on préserve la méthode communautaire jusqu'au bout. J'avais dit à propos du rôle de la Commission, pas d'idéologie, je l'ai dit à Vilnius.
Of course, if I compare to my initial proposal, I can have regrets, things that I would have liked to be seen to be done otherwise. But as I said from the beginning, already in Vilnius in September, as regards, for example, the role of the Commission, I never had any ideology.
Il fallait une institution pour appuyer sur le bouton. J'avais proposé la Commission en disant si vous avez une autre idée d'une autre institution, c'est ce qui a été choisi, c'est clair, c'est net, ce sera le Conseil, il n'y a pas de problème pour moi.
We needed an institution legally to press the button. I thought the Commission was better placed, but I said from the beginning, if you have a better idea, if you think there is a better institution, it's not a problem for me. And this is what we collectively decided. It's the Council, it's clear, it's neat, and it will be effective.
Donc franchement, pour répondre à votre question, très sincèrement, le résultat obtenu sur ce sujet majeur est infiniment plus positif que les quelques points qui devront encore faire l'objet de discussions avec le Parlement européen, hein, et qui méritent sans doute d'être améliorés encore. Hein.
So frankly, on balance on this major project, the great success of tonight is made of many more positive points than the few things on which we should still work with the European Parliament in order to better them. It's overall very positive.
Yeah, oui.
Hi, David Jolly from the New York Times. This morning, Mr. Constancio from the ECB made what was a pretty strong statement, I thought, echoing really a statement Monday in the European Parliament by Mr. Draghi, very critical of the complexity of the decision-making process. Was that taken into account in any way in the final outcome?
My answer is yes. I listened very carefully, Mario Draghi or Vittor Constancio, but to be clear, I made the same statement myself several times about the risk of the complexity of the system, because we need for the resolution to have a workable and efficient and a rapid system to work and to decide, even during one weekend, as you know. And I think clearly, to be objective, that this complexity has been reduced during the last few hours of negotiations, and is more clear now.
But of course, there is still, I think, room for simplifications. And for me, as a mediator of these negotiations, it was the most important to put all things together, to have something initial that could be worked upon, just to put together positions of member states, of which we have 28 with quite different views. But now, as we have something in one place, I think it's a right time during negotiations with the European Parliament, where there is also a strong pressure to simplify the procedures, to look where this simplification could be achieved. And on the other hand, to my mind, it's very important to make first step, because then you have a possibility to check in reality what is going on, how it is working, and we still can't tell whether single supervision is so efficient as it was planned to be, because it will come into full force next year. I believe that all these processes will be improved, and these files, resolution, supervision, they can be the most rapidly evolving legislative files in Europe, because you know the changing of European directives sometimes takes many years. But I think these new files, this new work of building a single banking zone, first in the Eurozone, but then extending its borders, is such new job and novelty in Europe that it will require new ideas, well, I think quite immediately in a couple of times. And this, by the way, was one of the ideas that I heard quite frequently from many of my colleagues, that we will have to review what we have in, say, in 5 or 7 years, because also the financial sector changes so rapidly. But I think we have put a very good ground where something good can be built and, if needed, changed.
But if I can add just a few words. We had, I repeat, made huge progress against the complexity of the system in the last few days and few hours. And as Riemann has said, we keep room for simplification in the next few weeks. For instance, I can give you two examples. I think it's possible to reduce the period of consultation during the process of resolution, to reduce the period of time of silence, which has been put in the draft. I think there is some key points where we can make progress to simplify the system.
Commissioner and Minister from MLEX, John Riga in the back here. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sure.
Besides the question of complexity about the length of the procedure, there is also the question of who makes the decision. And I want to just ask if you could describe how, if we have, say, another case like Dexia, where a multinational bank which has, very close ties with national ministries, could you maybe describe how that will be dealt with? Thanks very much.
I think Olivier could explain in detail this particular example.
All right, so first trigger. So that would start by the central bank, because Dexia would be in the directly supervised banks, declaring that this bank is reaching the point of non-viability. When this finding is made, then the baby goes to the Single Resolution Board. Board prepares the resolution decision on the basis of the resolution plans agreed in advance. Decisions transmitted by the board to the decision to activate the trigger by the board to Commission. Commission has several possibilities. Either it can say nothing and transmit the decision to the Council. If it says nothing, that means his opinion is favorable, and the decision is adopted by silence procedure. Or it can say, I don't like this decision for this and that reason. I suggest amendments here and there. Normally it would consult with the board, because in principle between normally intelligent people, if you discuss, you can agree. And the amended decision, either with the consent of the board or without the consent of the board, is sent to the Council. Council has to approve this decision with a special voting modality that sort of sterilizes the non-banking union member states. And there is a declaration of the member states of the Council to that effect. Now, within the board, a number of decisions have to be taken. These decisions are normally taken by what we call the executive session of the board. The executive session of the board is made of the 5 permanent directors, the 4 independents and the chair, as well as the home home and host doesn't mean much now in the, but the home and the host, or former home and hosts. There are a number of rules for deciding, relatively complex, which doesn't mean they're ineffective, but the goal is to protect everybody's interest, of course. But to cut it short, in the end, if the home and the host cannot agree, the independent directors that represent the general interest, the community interest, decide and have the last say. This executive session has the possibility to use the fund with limitations in terms of how much they can draw from the fund, in terms of percentage of actually paid-in resources available in the fund. If the board would like to use more resources than what is at the disposal of the executive session, then it has to be decided by the plenary. Plenary is all authorities of the member states, and they decide with a system of double majority, one man, one vote, qualified majority 66%, and more than 50%, representing more than 50% of the amounts paid to the fund.
Oui, en fait, les documents là que vous nous avez distribués quel est leur statut? Ce sont des documents de la présidence lituanienne? C'est les conclusions du Conseil? Ça n'a pas l'air d'être des conclusions du Conseil. Quelle est la valeur de tout ça? Est-ce que vous allez y revenir plus tard pour couler bien ça dans le marbre de conclusions du Conseil? Ou j'arrive pas à comprendre le statut de ces documents, en fait, qui sont des drafts apparemment, non?
Je ne sais pas ce qu'on vous a remis, donc exactement.
Par exemple, donc, visiblement l'article 16 dans le document.
Des documents de la présidence.
Oui.
Documents de la présidence.
Et donc, par conséquent, l'article qui visiblement statue sur le rôle de la Commission et du Conseil. Alors, c'est un petit peu gênant. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous confirmer qu'effectivement, c'est le Conseil qui aura effectivement le dernier mot?
Oui.
Le seul mot.
Et non pas la Commission.
La Commission ne décide pas. I just want to make this point very important. In any case, the Commission will continue to play a key role as it is. We are in charge of the state aid regulation. Hein? Et dans le respect de cette compétence régalienne qui est la nôtre, nous ne prenons pas de décision. C'est le Conseil qui prendra les décisions. C'est clair, non? Le Conseil qui aura le dernier mot. Et je trouve que c'est une institution, ça pouvait être la nôtre, c'est très bien comme ça. Hein. De toute façon, nous devrons travailler ensemble.
There was a question about formal documents that were distributed or approved. There is regulation by itself. There is also decision of the representatives of Euro area member states meeting within the Council of the European Union about committing the agreement and the addendum terms of reference of this agreement. It was agreed by everyone. Then there was a statement of Eurogroup and Ecofin ministers on the single resolution mechanism backstop. It was mainly discussed in the Eurogroup, but then refined a bit. There was a couple of addenda today. And there was also, I've not taken it with me, a special declaration of 28 member states about voting modalities in the Council concerning the decisions that Commissioner referred to, the implementing the decisions concerning resolution cases, whereby the non-Eurozone and non-banking union countries commit themselves not to make hurdles to take a decision that would reflect the opinion of qualified majority of banking union countries. So this was also an element of the whole set of documents. Now, the fate of these documents, regulation, as I mentioned, the regulation by itself as a legal act will go to trilogues and should be approved by co-legislators later. Then statement, decision to commit an agreement, intergovernmental agreement, and these guidelines will transform, hopefully very fast, into this very intergovernmental agreement that is planned to be signed as, well, projection, kind of with some optimism, but also, I think, very realistic, to be signed during the March Ecofin of the next year, by ministers having their legitimate powers. But of course, it will be subject to ratification procedures specific to the member states. This can be quite a complicated stage, but nevertheless, I think it will be successful. And the declaration of member states about voting will come into force formally when the formal adoption of single resolution mechanism regulation after agreeing with the European Parliament will take place also in the Ecofin or other formation of Council of Ministers. So I think that's it.
Okay.
Several issues that were put in the minutes of the Council as well, by the request of the United Kingdom, for example, that want to protect British taxpayers. Yeah?
Last question.
Christopher Zieler from the Stuttgarter Zeitung. 2 questions on the intergovernmental agreement.
Yeah.
Is it planned to integrate it back into community law at some stage in the future? And a second question, perhaps to the Commissioner. Has the community method again taken a blow this evening? And are we further proceeding towards an intergovernmental union? Thank you.
The idea to have this intergovernmental agreement came, first of all, from the position of Germany. And if you consider the legal situation in real terms, there is difference between a subject that is being regulated by different legal acts in Europe. Sometimes this regulation quite normally could be challenged in the Court of Justice, but in the case of bank resolution, of course, all the errors that could be made, especially legal errors, will be challenged with huge sums. And then the question is, who will be liable if the legal basis will be insufficiently firm? So just to ensure ourselves that this legal basis is okay, that we have quite good legal regulations, of which the best are national legal regulations to put a levy on the bank, and a good way of collecting this national money, actually national money, for some single purpose in one fund that will be then spent for resolution purposes, and will be somehow gradually mixed within. We found that the intergovernmental agreement was a pretty good form just to make this legal basis much more firm. But what was possible to be left in the community regulation sphere under Article 114 of the European Union, it was left in the regulation. And essentially this is the procedural rules, decision-taking procedures, and things like that. But there is a close connection between the regulation and the future intergovernmental agreement. It was a discussion, and we found a method how to ensure that they come into force together. They complement each other but do not repeat each other. And we try to minimize the matter of the intergovernmental agreement with a view to put as much as possible regulation to the Article 114 based legal act. In the future, you hear the voices, and the recent declaration was made by Chancellor Angela Merkel that she sees a need to change some European treaties. If we have some changes in European treaties, I don't exclude that we will take into account the necessity to have such interesting formations where not all 28 but part of member states are present, and need to have regulations efficiently enforceable towards legal entities and people. So I think we have found now the optimum solution. but this does not mean that somebody takes some fund and goes out of the European Union. By no way so. This is a way on the integration path, especially that the banking union includes now the Eurozone countries by definition, but it is open for non-Eurozone countries, and we made some we put some legal formulas into our text so as to facilitate the countries that opt to participate in the banking union in the near or further future to be active participants in these negotiations and to have a real say on the issues that will be done. By the way, during the discussions about the intergovernmental agreement, it has been stated that any member state without special invitation will be able to participate as an observer, of course, but this is a real influence and real wish to take all 28 on board.
Peut-être puis-je ajouter, nous parlons bien d'un fonds européen commun, non pas d'un network de fonds, avec des décisions prises en commun. Donc c'est une avancée très importante, je dirais même inimaginable il y a quelques années, qui est due à la méthode communautaire. Premier point.
Yeah, and as the minister said, it's important to understand why is it we needed to have an intergovernmental agreement. The fund is a community fund. The structure is establishment, the way it functions, the way decisions have been taken, all of this is internal market based. And as the minister just said, this is why the discussions that will take place on the precise setting of this intergovernmental agreement will include all those member states that are willing to attend, including those that are not member states of the banking union, if they so wish. So we made the choice to leave the collection of the levies on banks at national level. The Commission thinks it could have been done otherwise. Some member states thought this was the most secure way to do it. We went for the secure way. We made the choice to leave it at national level. But once you collect the funds, the levy at national level, then of course you need to have a legal basis for the member states to bring this money into a common fund under community law. This legal basis is provided for by the intergovernmental agreement. They agree to put that money in a common fund, and they agree that this money may be used for something else than rescuing their own banks, i.e. rescuing also the banks of the others, mutualization. This is what the international agreement is basically about.
Maintenant, est-ce que ce système est définitif? Sûrement pas. Il est là. Notre responsabilité était de le délivrer maintenant sans attendre pour faire face à d'éventuelles crises. La Commission...
Is this system a definitive one? No, certainly not. But it is here, it is robust, it is long-lasting, and it will be able to face crisis and deal with crisis.
Et nous-mêmes, nous avons dans le blueprint évoqué, comme la chancelière allemande, comme d'autres, des évolutions futures du traité pour mieux gérer la zone euro. On peut imaginer des évolutions futures dans ce cadre, mais nous avions la responsabilité de délivrer maintenant une réponse pour la supervision et pour la résolution.
And the Commission itself, in its blueprint, has envisaged evolutions of the treaties to better the governance of the Eurozone in particular, and this could apply to banking supervision and resolution, but we had the duty and we had the legal means to deliver a long-standing, robust solution now, and we did it.
Okay, thank you very much.
So, thank you.